Hi everyone, my name is Lauren. I am on Team Ohyay. Welcome to Ohyay the Basics Part 3, a recorded training where we are going to go over some cool features and elements that were not covered in the Part 1 or the Part 2 training, and that can help you do some pretty cool stuff with your events. So the first thing that we are going to talk about in today's training is the room preview element. If you have visited us at our Training Tuesday events every Tuesday, then you have experienced a room preview maybe without even knowing it. So to give you some context, the way that the training space is set up in Ohyay is that I have my room, right, the instructor's room, set up, and it's a scene of a pool, right? That's my background. And I have then about 25 empty training rooms, right, that you toggle into, that you come into whenever you do the training. And there is a room preview of my room, right, of the instructor's room, of that pool in each of the empty rooms, right? Why did I do that? Well, a room preview basically gives you a glimpse into another room while not being in it, right? And so that's really helpful because I want each of you that attend Training Tuesday to be able to be in your own room and editing your own space the way that you want to do it. But I still want you to be able to see me and hear me. And as I do things on the screen, I want you to be able to see and hear those things so that you can follow along, right? And that's a really good example of the way that a room preview can be used. But ultimately, there are so many other ways that room previews can be used. So before we get into that, let's start by making one. Right, so we're going to go to Element up here at the menu bar, and we're going to click Insert Element and insert a room preview. Okay, so we've just got this empty box for right now, right? In the settings, under the Element category, right, we're going to select under Room to Preview, right, which room we want to preview in this one. So for today's training, we're going to do a room preview of the presentation room. So I'm going to select Presentation Room. And you'll see now, right, I'm going to make this nice and big. Maybe we'll put it on the couch. Now I've got a live preview into what is happening in the presentation room, right? So if there was someone in there, if there was something happening in the presentation room right now, I would be getting a live feed of it into my room, right? There are so many ways, like I said, that this can be used, right? A lot of people use it for trivia, right? So they might put different teams in different rooms, and then they'll broadcast the room with the trivia master, right? The game master into all of those rooms so that everybody can see and hear without everybody having to be in one room at the same time, right? Different rooms can be different teams where they can talk amongst themselves without getting the chatter from the other side. And it's a really good way to be just in smaller groups, but all experiencing something at the same time, okay? This could also be used similarly for presentations, right? Maybe you want to put a presentation on the screen and you want everybody to be in smaller rooms watching it, right? The possibilities are pretty limitless for how you can use room previews, and they're a really, really good tool to be able to know how to use in Ohyay. So a couple of things about room previews, right? If we select it, as we know in Ohyay, the settings is going to change to allow us to now edit the room preview. So you can edit a couple things on the volume here, a couple things, on the volume. So if there's music in the room that's being previewed, you can adjust that on this bar here, right? Participant audio, if there's, if somebody's talking in that room, how loud do you want it to be, right? Do you want it to be super loud? If you put it up to 100, it's going to be as if they were in this room, right? So the person in the room preview or whoever's talking in there is going to sound just as loud as the people who are talking in this room right now, right? So you can drag that up accordingly, okay? Another option that we have is to have the participant thumbnail only, right? So this is actually not going to pull in the video. It would actually only pull in, it would look like this, right? This little emoji over here on the left side. It's just going to look like that instead of pulling in their video. This is a good way to, reduce sort of the bandwidth that this room can handle, right? Because right now your computer would be processing everything that's happening in this room and everything that's happening in that room. That being said, if you don't want to just see somebody's thumbnail and you want to be able to see and hear them and, get the full experience, you would uncheck that box, right? So that it's not just, somebody's icon, right? You're not looking like at a stagnant thing. You're really truly getting that room broadcasted into this room as well. So that is the basics of a room preview, right? And like I said, room previews can be used for all types of ways. One of those ways is making a map or a lobby experience, right? So some of you may have seen different ohyay rooms where it looks like there's a bunch of room previews on the screen, right? And you can sort of like click into them and get there. That is really great, but having 10 room previews in a room is a lot, and it's a lot. It's a lot of noise. It's a lot of of power for your computer. It's a lot of bandwidth, and so what we can actually do is make a fake room preview. And when you make a fake room preview, all of these other possibilities open up. And it sounds a little bit confusing right now, but I promise it'll become clearer as the training goes on. So we're going to show you how to sort of make fake room previews and also use another element that we call the participant count element to make maps and things like virtual lobbies. So we're going to leave this real room preview right here. We're going to move it over for a minute. And what we're going to do is we're going to make something that looks exactly like this room preview, right? You almost wouldn't be able to know the difference, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to add a photo element, right? We're going to add an image. And this opens up the asset library, right? If I'm trying to make something that looks like a room preview, right, that looks obviously like somebody would be able to click into that in order to get there, right? I'm just going to click the background, right? This image is already in my asset library because it's the background in this presentation room. So I'm going to click that. Now I've got something, right? These basically look identical. One other note about room previews, if you go into director mode, right? Because right now we're just editing, right? So if we click on anything, nothing's going to happen. If you go into director mode to see, you'll notice that this element is clickable, right? And if I click on this, I'm actually going to appear in the presentation room. Now, sometimes that makes sense, right? Sometimes, you're putting a tiny room preview in another room to say, hey, go back to this room here, right? Maybe you've gone to another room from within another room and you want them to know, like, this is how you get back, right? So it makes sense. Oh, if I click on this room, I can go back to that room, right? And so sometimes that's fine. But other times it can be a bit confusing, right? If you're broadcasting somebody in there that's, running trivia or showing a presentation, people may get confused and they may click into it just because they can, and they'll end up in that presenter's room when you actually don't want them to. So if you click on the room preview, right, under interaction, you can actually take away the link to the room, right? So if you uncheck that box, this no longer becomes clickable, right? You're not going to enter, right? So it's basically the same thing as this image that we just put in, except for the fact that, this is the real room preview, this is the fake room preview, but it's hard to tell the difference. And that's going to be important for what we're about to talk about. So we're going to make a fake room preview, right? Because let's say we're going to build a virtual lobby experience, okay? So we want to show this as one of our rooms, right? And let's make this a true lobby experience, right? Let's give our guests a bunch of rooms to pick from. So let's upload another image, right? Oops, I didn't actually click out of that. There we go. Let's upload another image. And let's pick the beach resort, right? So, okay, we're going to give guests the ability to click into the beach resort as well. And maybe one more. Let's give them Greece. All right. So we've got some different rooms to pick between here, right? Well, right now they're just images, right? These don't actually do anything at all, but they look like they could, right? So what then we would want to do is, right, we'd add some text, right? Let's let them know what are their options, right? In order to do this, maybe we add a little background, right? Let's change the font color. And I'm moving just quickly through this because we did cover this in, in the part 1 and the part 2 training, but it's really just adding a text element and making it look a little bit different, right? So maybe we add this one here. Let's copy and paste this text. Oops, I didn't do that quite right. There we go. And let's move this one down here, right? This room is called Beach Resort, right? And copy and paste one more time. There we go, get that nice and centered for Greece. All right, so we've got a nice little menu here for our attendees to choose from, right? Now, the most important thing, arguably, for a map or for a lobby experience, right? If you're going to use this to replace the room list on the left-hand side, well, the beauty of the room list is that people can see who is where, right? They can see who's in what room, how many people are in what room, and then decide accordingly whether or not they want to enter that room based on who's in there and how many people are in there, right? So what we'll do is we'll go to Element, Insert Element, and we're going to add a participant count feature, right? So, all right. So this just shows up as a singular person. I'm going to explain why. Okay. So this is going to tell me, right, how many people are in the room. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is I want to tell this element, well, what room am I trying to find out how many people there are in it, right? So I'm going to go to room IDs under the element section. And let's first make it for the presentation room, right? So let's do room ID, and we're going to select presentation room. Okay, well now it's disappeared, right? Because there's nobody that's in there, right? And so that's not going to be very helpful for me to show you what this looks like. So for the purposes of just this one right now, I'm going to change the room ID to be the welcome page, right? Because since I'm in here, it's going to show you, right, that there is a person that's actually in this room. So let's go ahead and click welcome page just for this one. All right, so that little icon is telling me how many people are in this room, right? But I can change the display mode of what's here, right? It doesn't just have to be an icon. If there were 2 people in here, there'd be 2 little people icons, right? I can do a number and an icon, right? Okay, there's 1 person in here. I can do the number only. Oops. I can do names, or if I've got, I think I'm going to have a lot of people, I can do names in columns, right? So all different options, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is, well, and also you can change the text color, right? Which I'm going to do right now because I'm going to lay this over the room preview, right? I'm going to make it like the same size. Now what I'm doing is I'm making it very clear, right? And it's clearer whenever there are actually people in here because there's a whole list of names. Now it's telling me who is in this space, right? Maybe I'll like align them to this side and it will make columns for me, right? With all of the people that are in this room. Now what I have is essentially a fake room preview. And it's by fake room preview, I mean it is replacing the room navigator, right? You could turn off navigation in this space now and replace it with this sort of like lobby or map experience simply by using these 2 elements together, right? Just an image, the background image of the room that you're targeting and this participant count element, right? So in order to actually get this to be a real room preview, right? Because the point of that is like to be able to click into it, there's just one more step. We're going to scroll down to interaction and we're going to link this element to that actual room. Okay, so let's go ahead and change this one back again to what it's actually supposed to be so that we make sure we're setting this up correctly. So now we've got a participant count on the presentation room and it links out to the presentation room. We're going to want to make one for the beach resort as well. So let's add in another one. We're going to lay it over our beach resort, right? Let's make this room ID beach resort. We'll change this to names again, not that it matters because there isn't anybody in this one. And we're going to link it in interaction to the beach resort, right? And we would essentially then do the same thing one more time for Greece. Link this to Greece, room ID. Okay, so super simple. And what the point of this is that you're not using room previews because you're not pulling in all of this sound, all of this bandwidth, right? Everything that's happening in this room. You're actually just doing the same thing without doing all of that, right? You're still getting to the same end goal, which is showing your attendees the different places that they can choose to navigate between without actually pulling in all of the audio and the video from each of those rooms. So that is, in essence, how to make a room preview and how to make sort of fake room previews using participant count elements in order to make a virtual lobby or a map experience. Obviously, these participant counts, you can use them independently of this. If you have like a custom map scene that you've built out and you just want to lay a participant count with maybe just a number or the icons over each one, you can obviously do that as well. Participant counts are super helpful in just making map experiences in general. So that's room previews and, for lack of a better phrase, fake room previews. The next thing that we are going to learn about is something that pertains typically to presentations, to speakers, to panels, to auditoriums, right? Very frequent setups in ohyay. And so let's go ahead and clear this out. And let's go to the presentation room. So this is our presentation room, right? We've got two speakers up here that I've added in. We've got this one and we've got this one, and then I've got a grid chat down here for all of my, all of my watchers, right? My audience members, okay? So a couple of things about presentations, right, in general. First things first, let's go ahead and add in some fake people so that it looks like, we've really got a full house in here, right? So we've got our other presenter, and then we've got our grid chat down here. If you remember from the earlier trainings, typically in a setting like this, you'd probably want to mute everybody who's in the audience so that you don't have to do that. You don't have to ask them to do that, right? And if people forget, right, you're not getting like feedback from other people that are in the audience. So you would click on this grid chat as a reminder, scroll down, and you would drag both the external volume and the internal volume down to 0, right? So now my grid chats are effectively muted, okay? But part of what we're learning today is how to make presentations, how to make auditorium spaces way easier to use by use of buttons, right? So instead of doing this on the settings grid, right? Because maybe there's times when I want my audience to be muted and maybe there's times when I want them to be unmuted, right? And I don't want to have to go into the settings, go into editor mode and edit this in real time every single time. So we're going to make a button to do that. Right? So what we're going to do is we're going to make an action button. As a reminder, breakout buttons move people. Action buttons invoke actions. Okay, so we're going to click on that. Again, we're going to drag it into our notes and controls because this is not something that we want our audience members to be able to do. And let's go ahead and make a mute audience members button. Okay. If you remember from the part 2 training, super important when it comes to action buttons is going to be to name our elements. Let's go ahead and do all of that right now. So let's name our grid chat audience, right? That makes sense. Let's name this person presenter A and this person presenter B, okay? Because we're going to make some action buttons for them as well. All right, so for this action button, we are going to mute and unmute our audience, right? Let's talk about how to do that. So let's open up the action builder. Okay, we're targeting an element, right? Remember that element is going to be our audience. We are doing it in the presentation room, so we're going to leave that selected here. And when we're selecting our audience, selecting the element that this action button is referring to, we're going to select the audience. We're going to leave set as it is. And now what you're going to do is you're going to find the volume level, right? So if you type that in, right, we're not really sure, right? What if we don't know? Oh, there it is, right? So you just type in, it's super easy. If you type in like audio or something like that, right, that's obviously, it's not there. But if you remember from the settings, or you can just scroll through and look for it, it's going to be volume, right? And remember, we're doing internal and external volume. Okay, so now that we've selected external volume, we've got that volume bar all the way up, but this button is to mute our audience members. So we're going to drag it all the way down. Now, remember from the part, either the 1 or the 2 training, I can't remember at this point, but in order to mute a grid chat effectively, you do have to turn down the external and the internal volume, because the external volume only mutes it for people outside of the grid chat, whereas the internal volume will mute it for people inside of the grid chat. So to effectively mute them for themselves and for everybody outside of it, you'll need to add another line item, right? You'll notice that this basically just clones exactly what you just did. So all we have to do is now type in internal volume, right? Let's get that and drag this down again, right? So this is what our action button is going to look like to mute our audience members. Now, if you remember from the part 2 training, making the reverse of an action button is the easiest part. We're just going to copy paste. And we're going to rename this text to unmute. We're going to open up the action builder, and we're just going to do the reverse of this, right? We're just going to drag these volume bars up. So if I wanted to go into director mode, right, I could mute my audience members and unmute them just by using this button. Okay, super helpful for presentation type events where you're calling a show and you don't have time to go into editor mode and figure all of this stuff out, right? Just build the buttons as a shortcut. Now we'll talk about presenters, right? So there are definitely times where there are multiple people on screen, right? And in this training, I'm going to show you how to show one presenter while hiding and muting the other one, and then do the reverse, right? So it's a multi-level action button. Now, if you remember from the part 2 training, we actually already learned how to show and hide things. Remember, we learned how to show and hide the enter here button on our landing page, right? But we're going to go ahead and do that now with presenters. It's going to be almost the same. So let's make an action button and let's drag it into our notes and controls. All right. Let's say for the purposes of this presentation, right, of this event, that this person is going to speak first, and this person should be hidden and muted. And then this person is going to speak, and this person should be hidden and muted, right? So if you remember, I named this person presenter A and this person presenter B. So let's name this one show presenter A, hide and mute presenter B. Oops, I made that too big. All right, so we are showing presenter A and we are hiding and muting presenter B. Okay, let's open up the action. So, still pertaining to an element, still in this room. Now let's grab presenter A. All right, we're going to set this person to be visible. Remember, that is the toggle for making something visible or invisible. To show or hide something, this person's going to be visible. And let's make presenter B invisible, right? So since this is already a clone, all we did is press this plus button. All we have to do is switch this to presenter B, uncheck this box, right? So now you've told this button, you're making presenter A visible, you're making presenter B invisible with just this one button. Now let's do volume. Let's add another one. Let's go back to presenter A. And we're going to set, right, audio volume all the way up, right? So presenter A is now visible and their volume is all the way up. Let's go ahead and make another one. Going back to presenter B here, because presenter B should be muted. Okay, that's it. That's our button. Presenter A is visible with their volume up. Presenter B is invisible with their volume down. Done. Once again, the inverse, copy paste. Let's rename this button. Oops, that actually didn't work the way I thought it was going to. All right, let's show presenter B, hide and mute presenter A. That's why you can't take too many shortcuts. Okay, so when we open up the action builder, right, we're just going to invert what we just did. So we're going to uncheck this and check this. We're going to drag this down and drag this up, right? Now this button is making presenter A invisible and muted, and presenter B is visible and unmuted. Okay? So, done. Let's test this out. All right. So if I'm showing presenter A and hiding and muting presenter B, right? Now that person is gone and they're muted, but you can't really tell. So we're going to really test it out with this second button, okay? So we're going to lose my audio. So I'm going to continue to talk. You can hear me because my audio is back, but before when I was talking, I was effectively muted via this button. So now we've got our buttons have been made, right? We've done our, I'm checking to make sure my volume is up. And we've learned sort of the basics of how to set volume meters and sort of show and hide different presenters that will all be according to your run of show, right? But if you have been in an ohyay auditorium space before, right? Maybe you've seen one of our events or you've seen something that somebody else has set up. You frequently will see that in presentations, in in certain stage setups, what we like to do is move people around the room, right? And why would we do this? First, let's get rid of these fake people because we don't need them anymore. I can actually just go ahead and delete these elements, right? You might see that someone is first on screen like this, right? And maybe they're announcing a show. They're announcing that something is happening on the screen, right? So say, for example, I'm doing an introduction, right? Here I am. But I don't want to stay like this the entire time, right? Because I have something to share on the screen. I have a presentation to give. So I want to go from this setup right here to this setup right here with the click of a button, right? I don't want to have to drag this presenter, into another window. I don't want them to have to move themselves. I want a button that is going to keep this person exactly where they are with the audio volume that they have, everything configured the way I have it. But in one button, this person is going to go from a bubble that is this big, this width, and this height, and in this location on the screen to be in a more appropriately sized presenter spot over here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. The first thing that we are going to do is pick our spots, right? So let's go ahead and pick our first spot too. We're going to call this the introduction spot, right? This sort of feels like where somebody would be if they were giving an introduction to an event, okay? So what you're going to want to pay attention to now is going to be this up here, right? This X, Y, W, H. What these numbers are they're telling you where you are, where this element is within the space, and also what the width and the height of this element are, right? So this is where I am on the XY axis, and this is the width and the height of this element, okay? But I don't have to remember these numbers in order to build this button because as you're gonna see, ohyay is actually going to auto-populate them when you select them in the button, okay? And that's gonna make a little bit more sense whenever we open up the action builder. So let's go ahead and make an action button. Bring it down into the notes and controls. And like I said, we're going to call this button the introduction spot. So I'm going to say move presenter to introduction spot, right? Again, what these are called is it's totally up to you. Just make sure that you know what they are so that you know when to hit them. So this button is going to move me to this spot right here, right? The easiest way to make this button is that I'm already in this spot, and I'm going to show you why when we open up the action builder. Okay, so keeping element, staying in the presentation room, we're going to select presenter A, right? That's me. And when we set, right, we are setting these numbers up here, right? The X, Y, W, H. So I'm just going to type in X. See it right here. All right, it auto-filled into what my element is in right now. Okay? Now I'm going to do Y. It auto-filled that as well. I'm going to add in another line item for the width. Okay. And one more for the height. Okay, that's done. I did not have to remember these numbers up here. I did not have to do anything with that. ohyay auto-filled it based on where presenter A is, right? Where my face bubble is in the space right now. Done. Now let's go to my other spot. So let's go ahead and resize, let's move this window, right? Okay, let's call this my presentation spot, right? This is where I'm going to present from. It's not where I'm giving the introduction from, it's where I'm going to present from, okay? So let's build an action button. And let's say move presenter to presentation spot. Okay, and let's open up the action builder. Keeping the element, keeping this room, we've got to select presenter A, set, and we're going to do the exact same thing here, right? And you'll notice, since I just built this button, these are all in my recents, which is really nice. I can now just click on these. They will auto-populate accordingly. Okay. And now I've got this. Done. So let's test it out. Let's go to director mode. Maybe move this up a little bit so we can see our buttons better. And let's move me to the introduction spot. So now it is now automatically resized my bubble, right? And it's moved me because we adjusted the X, Y, and the width and the height. And let's move me back here. Right, so with a click of a button, you can configure how you want your room, how you want your show, how you want all of this to be called. Okay. And let's go to the welcome page to wrap it up. I'll move myself back up to the couch since we don't have any room previews in here anymore. Thank you so much for joining Ohyay The Basics Part 3 training. We hope you learned a lot and maybe can do some fun things with your events, some different navigational styles, some fun show calling things in your presentation, your auditorium rooms. Stay tuned for Part 4. And as always, if you ever have any requests for something that you would like to see featured in a training, whether it's a recorded demo or at our Training Tuesdays, please email us at team@ohyay.co and we'll be happy to get that incorporated into the future curriculum. Thanks again for joining. Bye.